State v. Gordon, 321, A.2d, 352, Supreme Judicial Court of Maine, June 17, 1974. Substantial facts. Gordon was being held in Vermont misdemeanor charges when he and his friend Strode escaped from authorities. After their escape, Gordon and Strode acquired 2 handguns and stole a station wagon. When suddenly the station wagon began to have engine trouble, Gordon and Strode began looking for another escape vehicle. They spotted a maroon Chevelle with keys still in the car in the yard of Franklin Prout. Meanwhile, Strode pointed a gun at Prout, and they both told Prout that they needed his automobile and that he would get it back as soon as possible. They later abandoned the car at a nearby hospital and would get it back. They later abandoned the car at a nearby hospital in Maine. Ultimately, both the defendant and Strode each faced charges of assaulting a police officer. The jury found Gordon guilty of armed robbery. He appealed. Gordon's main arguments were that since he lacked specific intent to commit the crime, because he informed Prout that he would return the car as soon as possible. With the defendant operating the station wagon and Strode the Chevelle, defendant and Strode left the yard and proceeded in the direction of Westbrook. Subsequently, the station wagon was abandoned in a sand pit, and defendant and Strode continued their flight with the Chevelle. A spectacular series of events followed, including the alleged assault with intent to kill upon Westbrook police officer Stoltz, a shootout on Main Street in Westbrook, and a high-speed chase, during which the Chevelle was driven off the road in the vicinity of the Maine Medical Center in Portland, where it was abandoned. Strode and the defendant having commanded another automobile to resume their flight. Ultimately, both the defendant and Strode were apprehended, the defendant having been arrested on the day following the police chase in the vicinity of the state police barracks in Scarborough. Procedural facts. The lower court ruled for the state of Maine, and the appellate court ruled for the state of Maine. Laws in question: 17 MRSA State Statute 3401, and a second indictment accuses defendant of having with intention to kill and assaulting a police officer. Remedies sought. Defendant is seeking a removal of the charges and dismissal of the case on the grounds that he had intent to return the vehicle back to the original owner. Issue. On the hypothesis arguendo that defendant here actually intended to use the Prout automobile only temporarily, as he would need it to achieve a successful flight from authorities, is defendant correct in his fundamental intention that in itself negates, as a matter of law, specific intent of defendant to provide permanently of the owner of his property? Holding: no. Reasoning: this idea to leave the car and get undercover somewhere existed in the defendant's mind as part of an uncertainty about where it would happen, because the defendant was desperate during the whole day. He had not really formulated any plans about his destination. Such testimony, along with other evidence that the defendant had already utterly abandoned another vehicle in desperation, plainly warranted a jury conclusion that the defendant's uttered statements to Prout were simply empty words, and it was the defendant's true state of mind to use Prout's Chevelle and abandon it. Rule of law: Commonwealth versus Salerno, Massachusetts, 255 NE2d 318, 1970, which said, one who takes property without the authority of the owner and with indifference, whether the owner receives possession, may be found to intend to deprive the owner of it permanently.